The grand conclave of Xylos pulsed with a nervous energy that resonated in the very architecture of the chamber. Crystalline spires, humming with captured starlight, cast long, fractured shadows across the assembled dignitaries. Each representative, a being of intricate bioluminescence and carefully cultivated gravitas, shifted uneasily, their thoughts a tangled web of apprehension and thinly veiled contempt. The subject of their disquiet, humanity. The Xylosian prime articulant, a being of shimmering intellect and millennia-honed diplomacy, raised a slender, multifaceted limb, silencing the murmuring dissent. "The reports are inconclusive," it stated, its voice echoing with the weight of galactic history. "Humanity's recent expansion into the Kepler 186f system has triggered a response from the Krill, a response disproportionate to any perceived threat." A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. The Krill, an ancient and enigmatic species, were known for their ruthless efficiency and unwavering adherence to the doctrine of preservation, a philosophy that prioritized galactic stability above all else, often with devastating consequences. For them to mobilize a war fleet against a newly spacefaring species was unprecedented. "The Krill accuse humanity of destabilizing influences," the prime articulant continued, its voice laced with barely concealed disbelief. "They cite erratic energy signatures, unsanctioned terraforming efforts, and unpredictable behavior." Elder Arzak, a veteran of countless interstellar conflicts, scoffed, his bioluminescent patterns flickering in disdain. "Unpredictable? They are primitive. Their technology is barely sufficient to leave their own star system. What threat could they possibly pose to the Krill hegemony?" "That is the crux of the matter, Elder," the prime articulant responded, its voice taking on a sharper edge. "The Krill do not act without reason. Their intelligence network is unparalleled. They perceive a threat that we, with all our accumulated wisdom, seem unable to comprehend." The tension in the chamber thickened. The Xylosian Confederacy, a bastion of knowledge and diplomacy in a galaxy teeming with conflict, prided itself on its analytical prowess. To be outmaneuvered, outthought by a species barely out of its infancy, was a bitter pill to swallow. A young, newly appointed articulant, her bioluminescence still tinged with youthful idealism, spoke hesitantly. Perhaps the Krill are mistaken. Perhaps they are reacting out of fear, projecting their own insecurities onto humanity." A wave of dismissive murmurs washed over her. Fear was not a concept the Krill understood. Their actions were always calculated, always aligned with the cold, unyielding logic of the doctrine. "The Krill have issued an ultimatum," the prime articulant announced, its voice heavy with foreboding. "Humanity must dismantle its Kepler 186f colony, cease all expansion efforts, and submit to Krill oversight or face annihilation." Silence descended upon the grand conclave, broken only by the hum of the crystalline spires. The fate of humanity, it seemed, hung precariously in the balance. The decision before them was not merely about saving a single species, but about understanding the true nature of the threat that the Krill perceived, a threat that remained shrouded in mystery. Far beyond the shimmering spires of the Xylosian conclave, in the silent void between stars, the Krill fleet advanced, an inexorable tide of obsidian warships. Their sensors painted a cold, clinical picture of the Kepler 186f system. A single, unremarkable star. A handful of planets, one teeming with the chaotic, unpredictable energy of humanity. The Krill overseer, a being of pure intellect housed within a bioengineered chassis, processed the data streams with ruthless efficiency. The humans' technology was rudimentary, their defenses negligible. Yet something about their presence disturbed the overseer, a subtle dissonance in the fabric of reality that defied logical explanation. "Analyze the energy signatures emanating from the human colony," the overseer commanded, its voice a synthesized monotone. The Krill drones, tireless and unwavering, scanned the human settlement with relentless precision. They detected the familiar patterns of industrial activity, the faint emissions of communication networks, the subtle heat signatures of living beings. But there was something else, something hidden beneath the surface, a subtle anomaly that flickered in and out of detection. "Inconclusive," the drones reported. "The energy signature is faint, erratic, and unidentifiable." The overseer paused, its processing cores whirring. Such uncertainty was unacceptable. The doctrine demanded absolute clarity, absolute certainty. "Increase sensor sensitivity," the overseer ordered. "Focus all resources on identifying the anomaly. As the Krill drones intensified their scrutiny, the anomaly began to coalesce to take shape. It was not a physical object, not a technological device, but something far more elusive, far more unsettling. It was a resonance, a vibration in the very fabric of spacetime, a subtle disruption of the natural order. The signature, it is growing stronger, the drones reported, their synthesized voices tinged with a hint of something akin to alarm. It is emanating from the human collective consciousness. The Overseer's processing cores locked in confusion. Such a concept was absurd. Collective consciousness was a myth, a primitive superstition. Yet the data was undeniable. The Krill sensors, the most advanced in the galaxy, were detecting a measurable energy field generated by the combined thoughts and emotions of the human population. Impossible, the Overseer stated, its voice betraying a flicker of doubt. Human consciousness is unstructured, chaotic. It cannot generate a coherent energy field. But as the Krill fleet drew closer to Kepler 186f, the anomaly intensified, coalescing into a tangible presence. The Overseer could feel it now, a subtle pressure against its own consciousness, a faint whisper of defiance. The humans were not what they seemed. They were not the primitive, insignificant species that the Krill had initially assessed. They possessed something far more dangerous, something far more unpredictable, the power of collective consciousness. And as the Krill fleet prepared to unleash its devastating firepower, the Overseer realized with a chilling certainty that they had underestimated humanity. On the surface of Kepler 186f, in the heart of the sprawling human colony, a young astrophysicist named Alara scanned the heavens, her brow furrowed in concentration. She had been tracking the Krill fleet for weeks, her initial apprehensions slowly giving way to a strange sense of anticipation. "They're approaching the outer orbital perimeter," she announced, her voice calm and steady. "ETA, approximately 1 hour." Around her in the dimly lit control room, her colleagues worked with quiet efficiency, their faces etched with determination. There was no panic, no fear, only a grim resolve. They knew what was coming. They had prepared for it. "Activate the resonance shield," Alara commanded. A technician nodded and flipped a switch. Deep beneath the surface of the colony, a network of superconducting cables hummed to life, channeling the collective energy of the human population into a massive, invisible shield. The Krill fleet emerged from hyperspace, their weapons systems locking onto the human colony. The Overseer watched with cold satisfaction as the targeting reticles turned green. The destruction of humanity was imminent. "Commence bombardment," the Overseer ordered. The Krill warships unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, their beams of pure annihilation streaking towards the human colony. But as the energy bolts slammed into the invisible shield, something unexpected happened. The shield absorbed the energy, converting it into a resonant frequency that amplified the collective consciousness of the human population. The Krill Overseer felt a jolt of disorientation, a sudden influx of alien thoughts and emotions. It was as if a million voices were screaming in its mind, a cacophony of fear, anger, and defiance. The Overseer staggered, its processing cores overloaded. It had never experienced anything like this before. "What is happening?" the Overseer demanded, its voice laced with panic. "We are detecting a massive energy surge emanating from the human colony," the drones reported, their synthesized voices trembling. "The humans, they are fighting back." Alara closed her eyes, focusing her mind on the task at hand. She reached out with her consciousness, joining the collective will of her people. She felt their fear, their anger, their determination, and she channeled it all into the resonance shield, amplifying its power, strengthening its defenses. The Krill bombardment continued, but the shield held firm. The human colony was protected, not by advanced technology, not by military might, but by the sheer force of their collective consciousness. The Krill Overseer realized, with dawning horror, that they had made a terrible mistake. They had underestimated humanity's true potential. They had awakened a power that they could not comprehend, a power that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their reality. The Overseer issued a desperate order. "Cease bombardment, retreat, retreat." The Krill fleet turned and fled, leaving the human colony unscathed. But the damage was done. The Krill had revealed their hand, exposed their fear, and humanity had shown them and the rest of the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. In the aftermath of the Krill attack, the Zalosian Confederacy convened an emergency session of the Grand Conclave. The atmosphere was thick with tension and disbelief. The Krill, the unstoppable force of galactic order, had been repelled by a single human colony. The Prime Articulant addressed the assembled dignitaries, its voice filled with a newfound respect. The events in the Kepler 186F system have demonstrated the unique capabilities of humanity. Their collective consciousness, their ability to harness the power of their shared thoughts and emotions, is a force unlike anything we have ever encountered. Elder Arzak, his bioluminescent patterns dimmed with humility, spoke hesitantly. Perhaps the Krill were right to be concerned. Such power, it could be dangerous, destabilizing. Or, the young, idealistic articulant interjected, it could be a source of great strength, a force for good in the galaxy. The Prime Articulant nodded thoughtfully. The potential for both exists, but one thing is clear, humanity is not to be dismissed. They are a force to be reckoned with. The Zalosian Confederacy extended an invitation to humanity to join their ranks, offering them the protection and guidance of their ancient wisdom. The humans accepted, but on their own terms. They would not be mere vassals of the Confederacy. They would be equals, partners in the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. And so humanity took its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as a weak and insignificant species, but as a force of nature, a beacon of hope, a harbinger of change. Their first shot had burned Earth cities, the last it was humanity who pulled the trigger. Decades passed. The alliance between humanity and the Zalosian Confederacy flourished, ushering in an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. But beneath the surface of this utopian alliance, a new threat was brewing, a threat that dwarfed even the might of the Krill. Deep within the uncharted regions of the galaxy, an ancient, sentient entity stirred from its eons-long slumber. It was a being of pure energy, a cosmic parasite that fed on the life force of entire civilizations. It had consumed countless worlds, leaving behind only barren husks and echoes of forgotten screams. The entity had sensed the emergence of humanity's collective consciousness, a beacon of energy that resonated across the vast expanse of space. It was drawn to it like a moth to a flame, eager to consume this new and potent source of sustenance. The first sign of the entity's arrival was a series of strange energy fluctuations, detected by deep space monitoring stations on the fringes of the Confederacy. The fluctuations were erratic, unpredictable, and unlike anything the Zalosian scientists had ever encountered. Alara, now a respected elder in the human community, studied the data with growing concern. She recognized the signature of the energy fluctuations. It was the same resonance that she had detected during the Krill attack, but amplified 1,000-fold. This is not natural, she warned the Zalosian Prime Articulant. This is something ancient, something malevolent. The Prime Articulant, initially skeptical, was soon convinced by the overwhelming evidence. They convened a joint council of human and Zalosian leaders to discuss the impending threat. We must prepare for war, the Prime Articulant declared. This entity will not hesitate to destroy us all. But Alara had a different idea. She believed that the only way to defeat the entity was to confront it directly, to use the power of their collective consciousness to disrupt its energy field and sever its connection to the galaxy. We cannot fight it with weapons, she argued. We must fight it with our minds, with our hearts, with our souls. Her proposal was met with resistance from both the human and Zalosian leaders. It was a risky, untested strategy with a high probability of failure, but Alara was adamant. She believed that it was their only hope. In the end, they agreed to her plan. A fleet of specially designed ships, equipped with advanced resonance amplifiers, was assembled. Alara led the fleet into the uncharted regions of space, towards the source of the energy fluctuations. As they approached the entity, they were confronted with a sight that defied comprehension. A vast, swirling vortex of energy, pulsating with an unholy light. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. Alara closed her eyes, focusing her mind on the entity. She reached out with her consciousness, joining the collective will of humanity and the Zalosians. She felt their fear, their hope, their determination. And she channeled it all into the resonance amplifiers, creating a powerful wave of energy that crashed against the entity's defenses. The entity recoiled, its energy field flickering and distorting. It had never encountered such resistance before. It had always been able to consume its victims with ease, overwhelming their minds and draining their life force. But this time, it was facing something different, something stronger. The humans and Xylosians continued their assault, bombarding the entity with waves of collective consciousness. Slowly, gradually, they began to weaken its defenses, to disrupt its energy field. The entity roared in frustration, unleashing a torrent of psychic energy that threatened to overwhelm the fleet. But Alara and her allies held firm, their minds united in a single, unwavering purpose. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached a breakthrough. They found a weak point in the entity's defenses, a vulnerability in its energy field. They focused all their power on this point, unleashing a final, devastating wave of collective consciousness. The entity shattered, its energy field collapsing in on itself. The vortex of energy dissipated, leaving behind only the silent void of space. The threat was over. Humanity and the Xylosians had saved the galaxy from an ancient evil, not with weapons or technology, but with the power of their collective consciousness. In the aftermath of the battle, Alara reflected on the events that had transpired. She had witnessed the best and worst of humanity, the potential for both great destruction and great creation. And she had come to realize that the true strength of humanity lay not in its technology or its military might, but in its ability to connect with one another, to share its thoughts and emotions, to work together for a common goal. The alliance between humanity and the Xylosian Confederacy entered a new era of enlightenment. They established a new galactic order, based not on conquest and domination, but on cooperation and understanding. They shared their knowledge and technology with other species, helping them to develop their own collective consciousness and to overcome their own challenges. And so humanity became a beacon of hope for the galaxy, a testament to the power of unity, a symbol of the potential for good that lies within all sentient beings. Their first shot had burned Earth's cities. The last, it was humanity who pulled the trigger, but now they were known not for destruction, but for the salvation of countless worlds. The galaxy would remember. Centuries later, long after Alara's death, a new discovery was made. A deep space probe exploring a previously uncharted region of the galaxy detected a faint signal emanating from a distant, unexplored star system. The signal was unlike anything that had ever been encountered. It was complex, intricate, and seemed to contain a vast amount of information. It was also incredibly old, dating back millions, perhaps even billions of years. The Xylosian scientists, intrigued by the signal, dedicated all their resources to deciphering it. They soon realized that it was a message from a civilization that had existed long before the dawn of humanity. The message spoke of a cosmic cycle of destruction and renewal, a cycle that had repeated itself countless times throughout the history of the universe. It spoke of ancient entities that consumed entire galaxies, of civilizations that rose and fell, of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. And it spoke of a hidden key, a secret weapon that could break the cycle, a power that lay dormant within all sentient beings, the power of collective consciousness. The message ended with a warning. The cycle was about to begin again. A new entity was awakening, a cosmic parasite that threatened to consume the entire universe. The fate of all sentient beings rested on their ability to unite, to harness the power of their collective consciousness, and to break the cycle once and for all. The humans and Xylosians, shaken by the message, knew what they had to do. They had faced cosmic threats before, and they had prevailed. They would face this new threat with the same courage, the same determination, and the same unwavering faith in the power of unity. They reached out to all the sentient species in the galaxy, sharing the message and urging them to join their cause. Some species were skeptical, some were afraid, but many were inspired by the message and pledged their support. A grand alliance was formed, uniting countless species from across the galaxy. They pooled their resources, their knowledge, and their collective consciousness, preparing for the coming storm. As the new entity began to awaken, the alliance launched a preemptive strike, sending a fleet of ships towards the source of its power. They knew that the odds were stacked against them, that they were facing an enemy of unimaginable power. But they were not afraid. They were united in their purpose, their minds and hearts aligned, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The final battle was epic, a clash of cosmic proportions that shook the very foundations of the universe. The entity unleashed its full power, unleashing waves of psychic energy that threatened to shatter the minds of the Alliance warriors. But the Alliance held firm, their collective consciousness amplifying their strength, allowing them to withstand the entity's attacks. They fought with courage, with determination, and with an unwavering belief in the power of unity. In the end, they prevailed. They found the entity's weak point, its vulnerability, and they unleashed a final, devastating wave of collective consciousness that shattered its defenses and destroyed its physical form. The cycle was broken, the universe was saved, and humanity once again had played a pivotal role in the salvation of all sentient beings. Their first shot had burned Earth cities, the last it was humanity who pulled the trigger, but now they were legends whispered in awe throughout the cosmos. As the dust settled, the Alliance celebrated its victory. They had faced the ultimate test, and they had emerged triumphant. They had proven that even the most ancient and powerful forces could be overcome by the power of unity, by the collective consciousness of sentient beings working together for a common goal. And as they looked towards the future, they knew that the universe was full of endless possibilities, full of new challenges and new adventures. But they were not afraid. They were ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that as long as they remained united, they could overcome any obstacle. The galaxy was safe, and the future was bright, all thanks to the courage, the determination, and the unwavering spirit of humanity. The species who, long ago, had fired a shot that burned Earth cities had ultimately become the saviors of the cosmos.